Now, so Eric Vogt is playing blue-white-red control. Now, we've had a lot of blue-white-red flash today. Very few of it actually made the top 8. Eric Vogt is doing the more traditional control role of blue-white-red. He has a lot more removal than you'd normally expect out of the flash decks. You know, he has Detention Spheres, Is It Charms, he has 4 Terminus, 4 Supreme Verdict, huge amount of sweepers, 2 Etherling, and a Nickel Bolt, Niv Mizzet Draco Genius, sorry, as his win cons.
Okay, Mike Sullivan is playing a banned hexproof list, and it's mostly standard, with the exception that he's only running 2 Voice of Resurgence, and he's running 2 Silverblade Paladins, going up to a full 4 Fencing Aces. And you see Mike starting right off with an Invisible Stalker on turn 2 after Eric passes. Think twice in reply means there's an Invisible Stalker in play.
That it's going to resolve. So the Think Twice is actually a pretty relevant card in this matchup because of the fact that it can Miracle a Terminus. We'll find that Eric has very few ways to deal with the Bant Hexproof deck outside of the 4 Terminus, 4 Supreme Verdict that he's playing.
That said, those are pretty sweet answers. Mike's definitely going to want to get in there and aggro him out as quickly as possible. Unflinching Courage, not the most aggressive of his auras. It's 3 mana for +2/+2. Almost every aura in his deck gives him a better rate than that.
Right. So it's kind of funny when you play Bant Hexproof against a control deck because all the auras are really doing the same thing. You know, Spectral Flight is +2/+2 in flying. This is +2/+2 in lifelink. Rancor is +2/+0. But if your guy is Hexproof, you know, they're all the same card.
Yep.
And we see Eric just digging now on end step. Remember, those 8 cards are really what I think this game 1 is going to be all about.
Yes. I think that I like Mike's decision to go with the Courage for starters here. You actually see he has a hand filled with auras. He's got a Spectral Flight, a Fencing Ace, and Ethereal Armor. He's probably sandbagging the nice ones for once he's exhausted some of Eric's sweepers. You know, he realizes this is how he's going to be able to win the game.
So Vogt answers with a Supreme Verdict right away, just on the 3/3, which means really a vote of, you know, that he really must like his hand in this situation.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll see out of a blue-white-red control player, you know, if he only has 8 cards to interact with the deck, he has to make all 8 of those cards count really hard. And that was only a 2-for-1, for example. And a lot of times players will save it to make it a 3 or a 4-for-1.
Sure. Eric, I think I saw a little, Shakespeare going on over there.
Yeah.
Person goes, God, I don't have a play this turn.
No, he's
sitting on Azorius Charm, yeah. But Mike's not fooled. He does not add anything else to his Fencing Ace. He just sends over the 3/3. Mike's playing pretty carefully here. He wants to avoid getting blown out. He's only offering these 2-for-1s. Granted, you know, he's getting 2-for-1 a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But that's much better than getting 3-for-1.
Right, so Azorius Charm will put the Fencing Ace back on top of Mike's deck. And Mike will be left to have to reload with another Fencing Ace that's in his hand.
Appears to be considering adding an Avacyn's Pilgrim to the board. I'm pretty sure that's going to resolve, that the Fencing Ace resolved. The Avacyn's Pilgrim should generally resolve. Yes. The difference being Syncopate is potentially a concern for the Pilgrim, whereas it was not for the Fencing Ace.
Right, so Fencing Ace and Avacyn's Pilgrim now for Mike. He not too much of a source of damage on his side, and Eric Vogt will use Snapcaster to Supreme Verdict again, just this time getting another 2-for-1.
Yep. And Mike, he knows he's got that one more threat, Fencing Ace on top of the deck, and that's what he's going to be in on. Interestingly, Eric, this is one of the few matchups where he can actually tap out for Aetherling safely. I just noticed that was a peculiar situation. He has one in his hand, and in most matchups, you really want to wait till you have 7 mana for Aetherling, but against the Bant Hexproof deck, they really can't do anything to punish you for it.
And Eric's going to make exactly that play. Etherling more than a match for the Fencing Ace that Mike drew off the top of his deck. And now we have a racing situation with both players still at very high life totals. Eric at 17, Mike at 23.
Mike really needs access to a card that gives Trample in order to make Aetherling's Blink not a Maze of Ith against his Fencing Ace. But he'll need more than just Trample. He'll also have to get above 5 toughness.
Right, Eric, with no 5th land, looking at his hand, he has a Ethereal Armor, it appears, and possibly an Unflinching Courage. Yeah, and an Unflinching Courage as well. He's going to go ahead and put 1 and both on the Fencing Ace. All in, as he knows how much, I think, all in, trying to race the Etherling.
Now Eric is in a reasonably awkward spot, as if he blocks, he'll just lose his Aetherling, and Mike's clearly planning to attack. If he doesn't block, he'll take 10, be down to 7.
Yeah, Fencing is now a 10-10 double strike. What do you think are the chances that Eric is going to, well, chump here, or maybe try to engineer a trade?
I don't know. To engineer a trade, he'd obviously have to pump Aetherling down to a 3/6, but that's not going to work out. It'll just save up 6 damage.
Right.
So I imagine he just has to take it here, go to 7, and try and set something up for next turn.
Right. So
I see at least an Augur Bolus in his hand. I'm not sure what else, and that could potentially find him one of a variety of answers. And he just drew a Snapcaster Mage.
The swing for 10 knocks Eric down to 7, making this Fencing Ace lethal. Mike goes back up to 33. Yeah, Snapcaster Mage, as you said, drawn for Eric Vogt. And as we see, a Azorius Charm in his graveyard as well.
Yeah. That's almost certainly going to be his line. And looking at Mike's list, he only has 2 Simic Charms to punish Eric for that particular play.
Right. Augur Bolus is able to find a Terminus, thus then adding to the number of answers that Eric has available to him.
Yep, he can Terminus now if he wants to, but it'll cost him his Aetherling, and I imagine he's going to be feeling pretty comfortable sitting on that Snapcaster Mage. He's going to go for it. He's going to make Mike have Simic Charm. We know Mike doesn't, but funny thing about Magic the Gathering,
he does have the top card of his deck.
You draw a card every turn, that's right. It's the one rule they're not changing. So we're in for a good old-fashioned sweat here.
Aetherling swings for only 4 Eric, because Mike, I think, it's such a high life total, Eric's not pushing damage yet.
Sure, I feel like it was just fine to get in for 5 and then blink it to just have an extra body.
And so swing of Fencing Ace, block, and Snapcaster Mage will be cast from Eric Vogt, and that will get Azorius Charm. It is the Simic Charm in Mike's hand, and it is not. Fencing Ace returns to the top of the deck and bins both the auras.
All right, well, that's going to put Mike in a really bad position. The Aetherling definitely winning a race against virtually anything Mike could do from this point, despite being on 7 life. Eric's in a controlling position.
All right, so Mike does have a follow-up threat here. He's going to go ahead with Silverblade Paladin. It doesn't have anything to pair with yet. We do know that the top card in Mike's deck is, once again, Fencing Ace. How Eric, there could be an aura possibly, maybe some way that Mike just needs to sneak in these last 7 damage.
The issue here is that Eric's Aetherling is more than capable of tangoing with both Silverblade Paladin and Fencing Ace, so if he just goes attack, blink, he'll be in a fine spot. He's not even going to do that. He's going to play Niv
Mizzet, the Draco Genius. So this is a one-of in Eric Vogt's deck. Eric has 3 finishers in the form of 2 Aetherlings and 1 Niv Mizzet, and this is the one-of that he's drawn. I mean, if he untaps, that threatens to really just win the game, right?
Certainly. Much like an Olivia Voldaren, the ping will just take over all of Mike's creatures, killing them as opposed to stealing them.
So here, Niv Mizzet Draco Genius, 5/5 for 6. It has the ability, much like Olivia Voldaren, for 2 mana to deal a damage. Its mana is a little restrictive as it needs both a blue and red mana to do it, so planes won't be of any help in tapping it. Still, Eric has 3 activations, which should be more than enough right now to kill all of Mike's creatures.
Yeah, Niv Mizzet plays Homewrecker right there, breaks up the relationship between Fencing Ace and Silverblade Paladin, and untaps, and that'll about do it. Mike's on 1 card, facing down the most dominant board position I've seen in recent memory.
Right. Well, especially when you know, I think, with Mike's deck, with no removal, there seems to be a lot of rares going on Eric's side.
Yep. I note that Eric doesn't pump there, has the Niv Mizzet ping available. The only real cards he can be concerned with are like Selesnya Charm, which is a reasonable card to play around out of Hexproof. Most people run Simic Charm or Selesnya Charm. We know that Mike has made a decision on Simic Charm, but Eric has no such luxury. So he's going to just eke value out the old-fashioned way with Niv Mizzet.
We see 3 end-step activations. The first one hit Mike and drew a card, and it looks like the second 2 are also both hitting Mike and drawing cards. Opting not even to kill the Silverblade Paladin, he's trying to lock up the game just with more cards.
And damage. Can't forget about that damage.
Yeah, Mike down to 18. Should be about 2 swings left before Eric can seal this one in.
Yep. He's taking no chances, just playing things cautiously. Doing some math, wants to see if he can perhaps clinch it this turn. If he had swung with the Niv Mizzet last turn, I think that he could have, perhaps.
Yeah, and it looks like Eric's going to go with the safe plays and go for the 2-turn clock. This turn just attacking for a little bit this turn and making the lethal swing next turn.
Looks like he is going to go for the 8 with Aetherling, or at least for some amount.
Yep, and Eric is specifically picking out, his worst lands to tap for Aetherling. The pump is actually colorless, so he wants to leave up probably as many blue lands and duels as he can. And he's just going to pump for 1. So I think what it looks like he was doing is he was searching out Niv Mizzet pairs. As you see, he's paired up his lands in 2s. Those each represent a Niv Mizzet activation. And in a pinch, he can break up one of his pairs in order to blink an Aetherling. But as we know, there are no pinches incoming. All right, so Silverblade, a second Silverblade for Mike Sullivan. He's going to try to soulbound them. Before that can happen, Eric Vogt is going to go ahead and knock out that Silverblade Paladin and take out the other Silverblade.
Did he have the mana to take out? Oh yeah, he had exactly two.
He had four activations. Yeah, it actually.
I only saw one up missing off to the side for a second there. So now Mike's pretty much open for business.
This swing should be lethal. It's going to be 4, 9, 10, 11, 12 damage. A 12 damage swing. Mike Sullivan at 13. He's going to take it, and that last Niv Mizzet activation should be enough. Or an Etherling Pump, or a number of ways. Yep, he's going to then post-combat deal the 1 damage.
That'll do it.
All right, game 1 goes to Eric Vogt here, playing blue-white-red control against Mike Sullivan's Bant Hexproof deck.
Moving over to the sideboard, Mike's not built super well to fight back against this matchup. He does have access to 4 Stranglergeist, which in my experience are reasonable against a controlled exit fighting sweepers like Supreme Verdict. Problem is things like Azorius Charm and Terminus. Yeah. I don't really care that much about Undying. He'll be more reliant on his negates.
So typically, I think where we see Stranglergeist to be strong in the Bant Hexproof deck is against black, against Edict style effects.
It's much better there. It's also very good in the aggressive matchups where it can play like a Voice of Resurgence type role, blocking and becoming a larger threat. But against blue-red control, you probably are just stuck with it because things like Fencing Ace are just too vulnerable for you to rely on them.
Right. So what Mike Sullivan has to, I think, when he's playing around here is the fact that Vogt's deck has, like we said before, 4 Supreme Verdicts, 4 Terminus, 3 Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah.
So, as we said there, Snapcaster Mage functioned as a second Supreme Verdict. Obviously, he can't counter the Supreme Verdict. I would imagine we probably would see Negate with the hope to snag a Terminus from him if he has him.
Yeah, he'll certainly be bringing the Negates. Wouldn't be too surprised to see Rootborn Defenses perhaps make an appearance. It's only good against the Supreme Verdicts, really, as Eric's list looks to be particularly light on burn spells.
Yeah.
And most of Mike's better creatures aren't even targetable in the first place, so yeah, the Rootborn Defenses is not what it can be in some of these matchups. So he's probably just going to lean on the Negates and his additional Simic Charm, I imagine. Hexproof would have won that game, as we pointed out. And there's every reason for Mike to suspect he might be able to clinch another one with it.
Right, so when we look at Eric Vogt's sideboard, it doesn't really have too many cards that interact
It's a
here.
very interesting sideboard.
Yeah, a very interesting option, so I kind of want to go over this because, control decks really have a lot of freedom with sideboards. Eric Vogt has 2 Gideon Champion of Justice, a full 4 Blind Obedience, and then he has 2 Divine Deflections, which is the rare, it's the basically the Shining Shoal style where it redirects damage out of Avacyn Restored. So, other than that, other things are pretty normal. He has some Rest in Pieces, and Assemble the Legion, and 2 Jace Memory Adept. So a lot of alternate win cons for control mirrors, it seems like. In this matchup, I'm not sure he's boarding in any of these cards right now.
Yeah, I agree. None of these cards look especially attractive. There might be some temptation to bring in like a Divine Deflection, but honestly, like, what are you taking out? Every card in the main deck just seems better. And Divine Deflection is a pretty mediocre fog as fogs go, considering how much it must cost him. There are cards in his main deck that don't seem great. Jace Architect of Thought is the one that jumps most immediately to my mind, as, the +1 is pretty marginal against this particular deck. But at the same time, just playing a 4-mana guy that draws you a card and then maybe fogs an attack is not so bad.
Yeah, when you look at the cards I think that Eric Vogt has here, Detention Sphere obviously can hit auras. Izzet Charm can counter auras. Azorius Charm, as we saw, was actually fine. Not all of Mike Sullivan's cards have hexproof. Revelation's obviously good. Interestingly enough, Eric Vogt's only playing 2 Sphinx's Revelations in his control deck. Other than that, Terminus and Supreme Verdict are what he relies on. Dissipate's fine as well. I think, for a control deck, this is a deck that is really remarkably not soft to ban hexproof.
Yeah. I think that's been true of many of the blue-white-red lists, mostly because of their willingness to start overloading on these sweepers now. Terminus, especially, has become one of the most impressive sweepers, I think, in Standard.
Yeah.
I've sought for decks that can play it, and I just refuse to blue-white-red control. It's not my jam.
Well, I think it's really impressive. This is the first control deck, at least I've seen, that is running the full 8 sweepers. Usually you'll see some combination of them, and actually in the blue-white-red flash decks we saw earlier today, a lot of them had 0 sweepers in the main and maybe 2 in the board. Eric's completely different philosophy, 8 sweepers in the main.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons Eric has been able to cut a lot of these burn spells. We don't see Pillar of Flames or Searing Spears in Eric's deck, and it's because he has those sweepers. He can rely on those instead. That's, I think, the primary reason that most blue-red control decks don't run so many sweepers, because if they did that, they'd just be filling their decks with a bunch of blanks, Pillar of Flames and Searing Spears that either don't kill anything or killed the creatures he was going to wrath away anyway. So there's a delicate balance to be struck there. However, Eric has decided to, rather than strike that balance, just give up a little bit of his early game in exchange for having these crushing sweepers in the late game.
Exactly. So we see Mike Sullivan is down to 6 cards right now. That's not an uncommon thing for Bant Hexproof. The deck, mulliganing is probably its worst enemy, as its draws can be so powerful.
Yeah, we saw a player go to 4 on camera with Bant Hexproof already today, and Mike is on his way to joining him, heading down to 5. We were discussing mulliganing with Bant Hexproof, and I feel like you have to keep a lot of weak 5s just because your 4s are super marginal with the deck.
Well, the thing is the deck is kind of it's an A, B, and C deck, and that you have the A, lands, creatures, and auras, and you need some we call them A's, B's, and C's, and you need some of each of them in an opener to make the hand actually work. Because of that, a 5-card hand, it's really asking a lot. To, mulliganing to 4, it's asking a lot to get all 3 pieces together in a 4-card hand. Like, the deck just actually doesn't function on that many cards, so I think every 5 is keepable. Yeah,
I think on 5 you have to keep anything that's like an A and a B, or a B and a C, or an A and a C. Like, you have to be okay missing a couple of some of your parts, because your 4-card hand is just very likely to be missing 1 or even 2 of them.
Exactly.
So any 5er that has multiple parts of your plan is going to be pretty strong.
All right, so Mike Sullivan with no turn 1 Plague, no Absence Pilgrim, he's kept a 1-lander with the Hallowed Fountain and misses his 2nd land.
So I guess that's an A and a B, probably?
Yeah. He does on the 2nd turn hit his 2nd land. It's Sun Petal Grove, and he'll make a Fencing Ace.
He has, I believe, another Fencing Ace and a Strangleroot in his hand. Obviously, the Hallowed Fountain kind of thrown a wrench in Strangleroot plan. Won't be deploying that guy for a little while.
Yeah, Vogt end steps Think Twice, and he's got to be pretty happy with the fact, I would think, that Mike's not playing any hexproof creatures. He's really just playing, 2-drop, 3-drop, 2-drop, 2-drop aggro. I would
Very
think.
true. He might not be happy with this creature, though.
Yeah, this one is Voice of Resurgence from Mike Sullivan. So now that joins Fencing Ace, and we may see...
If you're going to Izzet Charm that Fencing Ace, now's the time.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's debating on, whether or not Izzet Charm should come into play here. I think a little bit... What do you think of the fact that Eric played his Hallowed Fountain untapped there for life, to the purpose of saving life points? Because you're playing against a 5-card hand, how do you feel? I mean, I feel like that play is probably more conservative than you need to be. He had Dissipate in his hand, and he wasn't able to Dissipate because of that.
He also had Plains in his hand. He chose that turn to play the Shockland, feeling kind of free. I would have probably just played the Plains, personally, planning to at least flashback Think Twice if my opponent didn't do anything.
It seems like it'll all still be fine here. Eric plays Augur of Bolas, finding Terminus, and main phase Izzet Charms down the Voice of Resurgence. So actually, as the board stands, there's, Eric's going to take 2 this turn from an all-out attack.
Assuming Mike's willing to make it, he'd have to enchant his Fencing Ace to avoid losing it in combat.
Right. It's very hard for Mike to attack here. Still no 3rd land as he drew Geist of St. Traft for the turn.
He just saw Eric pick up a Terminus, so he's going to be reluctant to commit more creatures or more auras. He knows that Eric will eventually have the capacity to sweep them, so he has to be careful. I like Ethereal Armor at a minimum. Kind of just get you in the game. The Absence Pilgrim might be a little bit greedy.
All right.
If he has a negate, I like the Absence Pilgrim. I can't see his hand to that extent. If he has negate, I like this line.
All right, so he's going to go ahead now with a 3/3 Elemental token and a 2/2 Double Strike Fencing Ace. The goal here, I think, was that both these creatures are creatures that would defeat Augur Bolas in combat. Yep. It's a swing for potentially 7 damage. We'll see how Eric responds to it. And it looks like he responds by taking all the damage.
That implies he does not have access to Supreme Verdict.
Or possibly he blocked. We'll confirm what's happening here in a second. I think Eric believed the Elemental was only a 2/2, so it looks like he blocked the Elemental and took 4. Then now his Augur does die to that.
Well, in that case, yeah, it was probably just didn't realize the Absence Pilgrim made it a 3/3, as obviously that block, has him taking 1 more damage and still losing the Augur of Bolas.
Plenty of control answers. It looks like Eric Vogt has triple Dissipate right now in his hand.
That's not really where he wants to be, facing down a legion of threats. Detention Sphere will give him a quick 2-for-1 on the Fencing Ace, but he's still waiting for the 6th land for that Terminus. I don't think he has one.
No, he doesn't have the 6th land. He also, so his hand is triple Dissipate Terminus and a Niv Mizzet Draco Genius. Of note, he only has 1 red mana in play. So actually, if he doesn't draw a land, he may not have any plays available to him.
Yeah.
This might be the opening that Mike needs as he crashes in for 3 more damage. Because Mike can do the post-combat creature possibility. And another draw here is not a land, but it is a Supreme Verdict for Eric Vogt. And I would have to think he's going to play it right away here,
Yep.
just simply to get the mana off the table for Mike Sullivan.
Yeah, I agree. I think that attack with that Pilgrim was probably a little aggressive. Mike has like Ice to St. Draft in his hand. He could have just played it. Obviously, it would have wound up being swept up in the Supreme Verdict. But
turns out that this was for the better.
Yeah, it worked out. To be fair, he doesn't know Eric's mana screwed necessarily, so he could have been planning to hold it for post-terminus.
And Eric draws yet another 6-drop. He drew Aetherling for the turn.
It's the only one left in the deck, right?
Right, and now flashes back, think twice, and hope to get the 6th land. He does not. He hits Snapcaster Mage. Once again, Snapcaster on Supreme Verdict, an excellent play, but a 6-mana one.
This is going to be a delicate dance for Mike. He would really like to resolve Geist of St. Trap. He's got a clock in Invisible Stalker, and he just drew a negate. So he's got some options here. I think at this point he probably wants to just rancor up this Invisible Stalker, which he's done, and then keep passing turn with negate up, and just hope that Eric doesn't find a second Terminus or a Supreme Verdict.
Eric finds Augur Bolus. That is not the answer he wants. Remember the negate. If Eric is savvy, he can play around the negate by playing Snapcaster Supreme Verdict.
Yes.
But that I think that takes a little bit of moxie to find that play.
A little bit. And Mike can also has the option of, if he draws additional enchantments, being able to shortcut the clock in an unpredictable fashion. Right now, Mike knows he's dead in 3 attacks. With the right draw steps, Mike could make that too.
You mean, yeah, and there are even some, incredible draws. Say Mike plays a pair of ethereal armors, and that's lethal right now.
Yep. Faithless Looting digs 2 cards deeper for Eric. Flashback via Snapcaster Mage. Is it Charm Faithless Looting, I should say.
Right, and I really like that play here. Votes and discard 2 of his Dissipates. The card's being pretty dead right now, and put a land into play tap.
I think the play was correct, but it actually looks like it made Eric's hand worse, as he can no longer Snapcaster Mage Supreme Verdict, and the Terminus we know is going to get negated, assuming Mike doesn't get greedy and try and play another creature here. Given his patient play throughout this match, I would assume he doesn't, and we see him pass.
Yep. And Mike Sullivan passing, and he may be able to steal a game here.
We just saw Eric draw that Divine Deflection, a card we didn't think he'd bring in, but he has access to it, and it might just buy him a turn this game.
Yeah, Divine Deflection, and we see Terminus a snap negate for it.
I've never seen someone negate anything so fast.
All right.
Mike can smell blood in the water. Really wants to get this win.
Yeah, if he can get another
Simic Charm
on it,
+3/+3,
that'll do it. Mike Sullivan steals the game here from Eric Vogt. With this damage, taking
you look at Eric. He's like, I have 7 cards in my hand.
I have so many good cards.
How
did we get to this point?
Mike, cool as a cucumber, just picks him up, Iceman shuffles.
Yeah. So you have to wonder.
There we go. Breaks a smile.
Where,
the 5
where that land off the Is It Charm was. If Eric plays a little more patiently, he does have the option of Snapcasting that Supreme Verdict.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think it's hard to blame someone for wanting to find that. When you know a 6th land enables your whole hand to want to Is It Charm to find it.
Yeah, it is only basically negate that shuts him down there, and he knows how many can Mike realistically run. It usually is like a 2 of in these strategies.
Exactly, and it is confirmed just a 2 of in Mike Sullivan's sideboard.
That said, it was certainly a very good 2 of in that game.
Exactly.
Had Eric been perhaps a little more patient, might have worked out differently.
All right, so going on to game 3, Eric Vogt will get to be on the play. And this is one of those situations where you're going to have to, regroup and replay game 3 like it's game 1. Probably has that feeling that last game got away from him.
I think Mike played that last game very well. I think he's played the match pretty well, honestly. Clearly demonstrating some experience with the matchup and how he presents his threats. Just trying to, build to a clock. Not just jam everything on the board, cross your fingers, hope you get him. And that's how I see a lot of people play Bant Hexproof. But there's just because your cards are very similar doesn't mean you should just play them in whatever order you like.
Right. So game 3, Eric Vogt starts off with a Hallowed Fountain tapped, whereas Mike Sullivan's going to try to be a little aggressive on the draw here. He's going to shock for an Avacyn's Pilgrim.
Yep. And Avacyn's Pilgrim is a lot better against Eric's list than it is against many blue-white-red control decks, thanks to the lack of 1-mana removal spells, unless you're just casually miracling Terminus.
So Eric miracles the Terminus on turn 2. That's going to take care, basically just a white shock for the Avacyn's Pilgrim, but a pretty good one nonetheless. Mike Sullivan will replace it with a Fencing Ace and pass the turn back.
I like that play by Eric, deciding to miracle there versus doing anything else.
And he's going to do it. He's going to run it back again. Another Terminus on top. Really just buying himself
Mike
a lot of time.
A little taunt there, it seemed. Like, oh, I got you.
And now we're going to see, once again with Eric's deck, he has in his main deck a full set of Dissipates, and it looks like he has 2, possibly 3 again this game.
On the upside for Mike, he did lose, targetable creatures to those Terminuses, which is the kind of creature you'd like to trade for a Terminus.
Right, so there's a little, it's interesting because Eric's deck has very few ways to deal with these creatures. You actually have to start counting, how many Terminuses are left in the deck. 2 of them are gone, makes it a lot less likely.
Yeah. And his hand right now is 2 Azorius Charm, 2 Dissipate. None of those cards solve Invisible Stalker. They can't even see him.
No, they can't see him. I mean, there's also, I feel, there's a little bit that this Invisible Stalker is not a particularly scary card right now.
Hey, he's gonna get there. I got faith. Mike has a Rootborn Defenses in his hand. Seems inclined to want to hold it rather than committing more threats to the board. He's going to try and defend from Supreme Verdict. He has seen 2 Terminus, so he knows that Eric is, probably about twice as likely to have a Supreme Verdict as he is to have a Terminus, which is exactly true.
Right, and we see a draw from Mike Sullivan. It looks like he's another Fencing Ace in his hand. He's going to just continue to chip for 1. He's got Eric on this 18-turn clock.
I'd be pretty tempted to go ahead and just play a Fencing Ace here. I think he drew a negate, which makes that play a little better, and add some clock, but he declines.
Yep, and instead Eric Vogt's going to end step use his Desolate Lighthouse, discarding one of these Dissipates. He's getting rid of.
So far, these Dissipates have been discarded almost exclusively.
Yeah, the draw was Divine Deflection. Eric looks like he's in the plan to just continue to make land drops for right now.
Yep, and he's not under enough pressure to actually discourage that. Things could change very quickly. 1 Rancor, a couple of Ethereal Armors, things change in a hurry, but for now, Mike's just chipping in and he doesn't have much else.
Yeah, Mike has drawn Guys to St. Trapped. It looks like he does have the Fencing Ace, and he's going to now choose to commit it to the board.
I think that we should have committed it as soon as we drew the negate, probably.
And Eric opts to go with the Dissipate for Fencing Ace.
Mike immediately pitches the Fencing Ace, and I think that's a fine trade for him.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm myself, Dissipate hitting Fencing Ace is pretty good, especially when you look at the rest of our hand being, Rootborn Defenses, Geist of St. Trapped, Simic Charm. I think any of those spells are more vulnerable to Dissipate than the Fencing Ace was.
Once again, we've traded a card that doesn't have Hexproof for a card that can affect cards with Hexproof, which, it's kind of an imbalance that he's creating slowly over the course of many turns.
Yeah. Second Invisible Stalker from Mike Sullivan. He's going to double the speed of his clock, and against the hilarious interaction where, Eric has the Detention Sphere in his hand, but the only thing that does not work in this situation would be Detention Sphere. Well, yeah, both the creatures have hexproof. But
but the auras
interacts with auras.
Yeah, that's the big danger, I think. Detention Sphere was one of the cards in his hand that actually did something, as opposed to Azorius Charm, which against this particular board is doing nothing.
Yeah, it just says it depends whether or not. So if you see a creature without hexproof, would you rather Azorius Charm it or Detention Sphere it? And I think Detention Sphere has a little more utility because of the fact that it hits auras.
Right, and Eric also has that Divine Deflection in his hand. He can obviously use that to zap a creature that doesn't have hexproof. However, he might be, not wanting to discard that one just because obviously it can prevent a lot of damage in a surprise fashion. But also, it's a little versatile and a little sneaky, and maybe Mike won't see it coming.
So Augur draws Think Twice, and between the Think Twice and the Azorius Charm in Eric's hand, he has a lot of dig right now on end step. Remember, Mike has to present a little bit of a clock. It's only a matter of time until Eric draws a Supreme Verdict or draws an Etherling and just starts racing him back.
Looks like Eric's going to go for Think Twice, Flashback Think Twice, I imagine. Hits a Glacial Fortress with the first half. Flashes it back.
He's going to flash it over, and remember, he still doesn't have one of those answers that it looks like he hits Sphinx's Revelation on the second draw.
That's a big card.
And that one's pretty big. It's if you give the control player enough time, he should be able to draw what he needs. Eric still seems pretty disappointed in his hand right now, though.
I don't know. I smell a little more Shakespeare.
Yeah.
That's how I'm calling it.
Well, I mean, it's very hard. If you're a control player, you're like, man, I just have these 8 lands and playing 6 cards in my hand, and my lands are all untapped. Gosh, it's going bad for me.
Life's so hard, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a convincing tale that things aren't going well.
A 5th land for Mike is great. He can now, negate and hold up Rootborn Defenses, but instead he opts for an uncounterable Geist of St. Trapped. This is going to leave him a little vulnerable. Eric will try for the Sphinx's Revelation. It will be rightly countered. But if Eric untaps and draws any of his sweepers, Mike will be just back to square one. And Eric even has a redraw in Think Twice in his hand. He'll draw. If he misses, he'll just play Think Twice, cycle, hope to hit.
Shields are down this turn. Eric's hoping to draw a sweeper. Can he do it? First draw looks to be an Azorius Charm. That's not going to do it.
We're going to Think Twice.
All right.
Or we're going to pass. I think we definitely should have Think Twice for a Supreme Verdict.
Yeah, he didn't dig for the sweeper, which really can put him on the back foot. Now Mike's swinging for 6 a turn.
If he draws a Supreme Verdict this turn, he's going to feel real bad. Mike's going to have access to the Rootborn Defenses again. And
remember, he can always go for the instant speed Terminus right now if he wants.
Sure, but he could have done that. Think Twice into Terminus on his own turn. He'll just have to pay 6 mana for it.
So Think Twice. Is it a Terminus? No. And he drew the card there. It looks like expecting checking for Terminus. He's aware of that line. Augur's going to block Geist of St. Trapped, and he's going to Azorius Charm the Angel token. So Azorius Charm to gain 4.
Mike should be okay with that, I think.
Yeah,
it's a little aggressive to Simic Charm here.
And it's a kind of a wise move on Eric's part because he realizes just how low his life total must be right now. And Mike's gonna go ahead and Lava Spike with the Simic Charm.
I think he went for Hexproof.
Oh, Hexproof
trying to get
guys.
extra point in, yeah.
And then another Azorius Charm, done targeting the Angel again.
He wanted to go ahead and try and get in 6 damage and put Eric down to 6 so that the next attack was for lethal.
Right.
But didn't work out.
And because he used both his Azorius Charms that way, Eric Vogt with very little card draw left.
Yeah,
he only went to 10, but he's running out of ways to find an answer. He has a Divine Deflection, which will buy him a full turn's worth of life points.
And he does have a Think Twice in the graveyard, but I think his correct line here is probably Divine Deflection this turn to save as much life as possible, and then Think Twice on his turn to get a redraw or a sweeper effect.
So this is a swing for 7. Eric's got to be really, really tentative here because one Simic Charm will spell Doom for him. He's going to go ahead and tap out, it looks like, for X equals 7.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and try and get Divine Deflection up on the screen so you guys can see it. Obviously not a super played card.
Divine Deflection, like Harm's Way, is one of the more confusing effects in Magic. This one only has one single target. So because you target where you want the damage to go, that means you can effectively prevent damage from hexproof creatures this way because so it prevents the next X damage. Here X is going to be 7 that Eric or 8 that Eric or his creatures will be taking, and it's going to shoot it to any one target, which will presumably here be Mike.
Yep. Oh, he only has the mana for 7. That's fair. It's 8 damage coming at him, but he does only have the mana for 7. He declines to go for that. He wants to draw a card first, then he's going to block the Geist and then shoot 3 of the damage back at Mike is what I'd guess, unless he's just going to take it. Looks like he's going to take it, plan for the Fog next turn.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of a fair play. He does have the Divine Deflection in case Mike were to go for, say, the Simic Charm there. And he drew another Divine Deflection.
Well, it's do or die now. He's in trouble.
He's going to pass the turn. I really don't like this play. If he lets the Lighthouses into a Supreme Verdict here, he's going to feel really bad about what just happened.
Well, he still has to Think Twice in his graveyard. That's just strictly superior. I think he should be going for that. And,
I want to say the Think Twice is gone.
Yeah, I believe he has another one buried. It's like the third card down.
All right. That could be. What Eric's going to do, so here's the lethal attack from Mike Sullivan. Remember, with the Angel, this is 6 damage unblocked. Eric's only at 4 life. He's going to have to make a play. Simic Charm in Mike Sullivan's hand does not help with Divine Deflection.
Unless Eric does something silly like target the Angel token or his Augur Bolus, but not likely to do that. Almost certainly going to send it at Mike's face, and it is basically his only real option here. If he's going to flashback, like I said, I believe there's a Think Twice in his graveyard, and if he is going to flash it back, he might as well do that first, as hitting a Terminus.
Yeah, or even just trying to Desolate Lighthouse into it. Both are fine.
It depends on 6, so he only needs to Divine Deflection for 3. So yeah, and it looks like he appears to have solved that himself. He is going to Desolate Lighthouse. Hits a Supreme Verdict.
And boy,
gets
almost
punished.
And I think the moment he drew it, I think he just realized what happened.
Yeah, if he had just done that on his own turn, he thinks he would have been saved. But we know Mike has Root Boner defenses and would not have actually died. In fact, would have just rammed right back for the kill.
Right. So right here, he's going to try a Divine Deflection for 5. It depends how much he wants to do it for. Either way, it's not going to work because because Simic Charm can give +3/+3, which threatens 9 damage. This will not be enough of a redirect.
That will, in fact, be exactly not enough.
Right, so he's going to try to shoot 5 of it back at Mike. So, like we said, Mike's going to have to present 9 damage for it to still be lethal. Fortunately, he has 6 unblocked, and he has a Simic Charm in hand. This should be a good find for him.
Yep. Mike's demonstrated enough math skills for me to feel like he should be able to make this one work out. He's just familiarizing himself with an unfamiliar card, as we ourselves did only mere moments ago. This is the kind of situation you hope for when you're playing Divine Deflection, though. You just play it, your opponent gets a little confused, not sure exactly how they should do things, but Mike is not fooled. He correctly identifies the fact that he still has exactly lethal damage, even with a Divine Deflection for 5, and Eric extends the hand. Good games.
All right, so Mike Sullivan, coming back from, I think, a mulligan to 5 in Game 2, pulls out Game 2, wins Game 3 through a bunch of sweepers. Top card was a Terminus, and Mike Sullivan advances into what we believe is our top 8.